Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish Prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.
Hi folks, and Merry Christmas to you and yours. I hope you've had a wonderful day. I certainly did. Too much food, probably too much drink, but it was an enjoyable time, and I hope you did too. So by popular request, we decided to do a wee Boxing Day show. So many asked us if we would put something out, and we're delighted. So many of you would like us to do that, and we're doing it. And I'm joined by my three amigos from down there on the borders, Yvonne, Ridley. Yvonne, Merry Christmas. How are you, my friend?
Yes, I'm fine.
Oh, I love your hat, a cracker. You're always good with the hats. Great with the hats. I'm an old cheapo, Chinese cheapo. We're also joined from Clickmannon by our Eva, our favourite lawyer, Eva Comrie.
Hi, Roddy.
Hi, Merry Christmas to you too, Eva. Oh, it looks very Christmassy there. Very Christmassy.
Oh, very Christmassy. I think Santa thinks that I've been very good all year. So we had a lovely day, so that was nice.
Excellent. Too much drink? Not enough drink? What?
A good balance was had.
That's right. I don't go for balance. I go for extreme. And of course, the Coatbridge Cavalier, after his trips to Seoul, to Tokyo, to New York, has deigned us with his presence today. Merry Christmas and howdy, my dear friend. How are you?
Yeah, howdy all. Magic. Merry Christmas to everyone.
You have a good time?
Cracking. Magic. Families, that's what it's about. Families and spending time with people that matter. It was wonderful.
Indeed, here we are on Boxing Day. There'll be a lot of hangovers out there. But the world still goes on. It still rotates. Politics never stops. And the story this week, of course, I'd like later on we'll do a wee review of the year and our hopes for next year. But this week, there's only one story really on the go of significance, and that, of course, the passing, Eva, of the GRR bill. It's caused so much controversy. What's going to happen next? Will there be legal challenges? Will Westminster strike it down? What do you think? Can you see what's going to happen in this coming 6 months?
Well, I'd like to start actually, Roddy, by paying tribute to the SNP rebels, and I think that a roll of honour is required for them. That's Ash Regan, Michelle Thompson, Stephanie Callaghan, Annabel Ewing, Fergus Ewing, Kenny Gibson, John Mason, Jim Fairley and Ruth Maguire. Now, they're all very brave individuals, and the stance that they adopted is such that really nobody in Scottish politics should ever try to characterise this debate in the way that it's been characterised at times thus far, which is by using words like hatred and hating on people in the trans community, because what we need to be doing here is looking very carefully and very sensibly at the Equality Act and at the balance of human rights. And there are conflicts between the rights of individual groups, but it's the job of sensible politicians who have the finger on the pulse of the mood of the nation to lead people forwards, not to kick them and cause bother where none ought to exist. The very fact that we're considering whether or not Westminster will intervene is shameful, but Westminster may well be justified in intervening, given that Nicola Sturgeon has empowered a position whereby there is nothing but disquiet, discord, disharmony in the context of conflicting rights. All that women like I wanted to do was to preserve our existing rights. And what's gone wrong with the Gender Recognition Reform Bill in Scotland is, instead of simply extending rights to a group who ought to have those rights, what's happened instead is that the rights of others have been diminished. And that's where the problem arises. So we talk about rights and safety and all different sorts of matters to do with common decency and just being good and kind to each other. And what's happened here is that there's been a complete and utter disregard of genuine, validly held concerns, because nobody's saying that all men are predators, but what we're saying is you don't invite problems, you address those issues before they arise. So will Westminster intervene? Goodness only knows, because you can see it from both perspectives. It's become a political football. It's not really about rights anymore. It's about political parties and governments scoring points against each other. And the victims are those who will fall victim to the predators who will take advantage of those loopholes, whether that's trans-identifying males trying to worm their way into female prisons unjustifiably, or whether it's to do with trans-identifying males insisting that they should be treated on female wards and the like. And these are all things that could have been properly debated, but weren't in the Scottish Parliament. So a shameful day across the board for very many of our politicians who have probably lost a lot of respect.
Oh, for sure. Yvonne, one of the things that struck me was the women who were there to protest the democratic right in our so-called parliament were warned, were thrown out, were corralled, surrounded by security men. And at the end, when this abomination of legislation went through, our MSPs stood up and applauded a gallery of men who are taking advantage. One of them was the man who has been seen in recent pictures with a baseball bat, threatening to go out and smash in turfs, as he put it. And our MSPs were standing up applauding them while they were corralling women out and throwing women out for wearing the suffragette colours, refusing to allow the saltire in because it had yes in it, political statement, but allowing the rainbow flag to be held aloft inside the Parliament building. You know, they seem to have got things back to front, Yvonne.
They've totally lost the plot. And in fact, one of the people that those MSPs was applauding is a sex worker who offers a whole range of services. I used to work on the News of the World. I had to go and look into the dictionary to find out exactly what these services meant. And gosh, well, that even if there was a watershed on Prism, and I don't often censor myself, I can't even describe the services that this depraved individual was offering. And there he was being applauded by these MSPs. I doubt if Rishi Sunak would be stupid enough to intervene, because if he did, I think people in Scotland would not want that sort of interference from London. We know we've got a problem. We know that the MSPs have made the wrong decision. And I think that the general feeling is we'll sort it out ourselves. We don't need the Tories coming up from London to sort it out. So I don't think Rishi Sunak will interfere. But it's not over yet, because there was a big disappointment among non-binary people who were not included in the bill. And there's a marine biologist called Andy who's quoted in today's Guardian saying non-binary people are still trying to get their own recognition. So there's a long way to go yet. And I'm afraid, Eva, that as women, you know, we're in the back seat of the bus again. It's when, you know, we've lost our rights. It's a very sad time. And going on the social networks, there are a lot of very angry women out there. One called Elaine, and I hope you've got a clip of her, made a magnificent protest from the gallery, just yards away from this man who offers all sorts of deviant packages in his sex worker catalogue. And Elaine stood up and she revived an ancient tradition of protest. She lifted up her skirt and she came out with, apparently it's a Glaswegian saying, go on, get it up here, or
Get it right up you, I believe, she said.
That's it. She explains herself on YouTube why she did what she did. And, you know, she's a very nice lady, reserved, intelligent, articulate. And these politicians reduced her to exploding on after the bill was passed and lifting up her skirt. And, well, it was wrongly reported she showed off her genitalia. She didn't. She was covered by something called a merkin. And I'm sure she started a trend, because I looked on the internet and they now are priced at over £60.
I can see you're champing a bit there, Phil, to get in. I've said it a few times on this show. I'm conflicted about the Tories interfering in this one. Because the Democrat in me says, no, you have no right. It's a decision being taken in Parliament I don't agree with. I'm vehemently opposed to it, but I'm opposed to them interfering. So I'm really caught between a rock and a hard place as to, because I worry for the females and my granddaughters, my daughter, and all the women I know and love, that they're in danger. So I'm really conflicted as to what I want to happen, Phil. Do you find yourself conflicted, or do you see it black and white?
Yes, no, I agree. The one of the questions we would ask ourselves is, what is the Scottish Parliament? And we know it to be an arm of the British government. It was likened to a council. And the Tories said, you know, let's reduce the powers even further to a council. It's not much above that of a council, because if the British government can step in and change anything, which they apparently can, then what's it for? What's it actually achieved? I mean, it's very much put in place to try and disprove the prospect of SNP being able to run this country with the little powers they've given. It's very much similar to what was done previously when we they tried to prove that we were incapable of running ourselves. But the limited power we're given shows that under Alex Salmond we proved we could do it. But what has this government actually proven? Because for me, the British government can, and I hope they do step in. Why? Because it's wrong. For the simple fact that this is wrong. The other bit that gets me is not what the Scottish people want. There's a couple of points on that. I mean, the gender reform, this is now through, so it's a betrayal, and it may be blocked by Westminster. And for me, the strategy is all wrong. It's a repeat of Joanna's so-called victories in the fight for Brexit. They weren't victories. They were Pyrrhic, if anything. And it's a stupid strategy. Why are we fighting things that don't really, and this, it matters, and it's the deletion of women's rights. That's what matters about this, not the promotion of a small subgroup that we do want to support and protect, but not in this way. We don't allow this right to be abused by individuals who undoubtedly already are abusing it. So no, it's a stupid strategy by the SNP. They can call it a victory, but it isn't, because they've turned everybody against them. I mean, look at the gender reform story that was well covered by Yvonne and Eva about the UN official in the Andrew Learmouth article, and another in today's Herald by Leslie Riddoch and Mark Smith. You know, remember the UN Special Rapporteur, Reem Aslam, and what was said there, Al-Salam. And that's been ignored. I hope Westminster strikes this down. What Eva pointed out, we should support the rebels. We've pointed to that before, and the roll call is properly put in there. Sadly, it didn't grow. I expected more courage.
Yeah.
They can stay. Everyone in that list can stay. You represent us. You represent the people of Scotland. You should wear a badge of pride for what you did there. The rest who didn't vote with the people and do their duty in representing their constituents, well, you should be removed, or a few may have their wet duffel coats on a sugary peg at best. But who do these bozos think they are? The people of Scotland do not want this. Any honest survey on this subject shows this to be true. So you have betrayed the trust placed in you by the people. Not good enough. The timing, the other thing that we should watch, be careful, be aware of this. The refusal to allow Scotland to have another referendum has caused an increase in membership for the SNP. I'm reliably informed by friends still in the SNP and who are in positions of power. Watch as this increase is used as a straight lie to imply that the gender recognition law is what Scots want. It isn't. And if they do say this, it's a downright lie. No, the girls are right. We will sort this out when we get indie. We will sort so much more out when we get indie. Everything else is just playing at politicians.
Yeah. You're right. I know I've alluded to a person in tweets and in a couple of my blogs. I know of an MSP who told me a couple of years back that it was a load of nonsense, this GRA stuff, and it wouldn't even reach a bill, this person told me. And if it did, they would most certainly be voting against it, and so would most of their colleagues. But it seems that the 65 grand a year plus expenses plus has changed people's ideas of what's to happen. But one of the aspects on it, Eva, that really gets to me, now I speak to you as a disabled person yourself, is it means now someone with no need to prove anything, that this prove that they've whatever it means to live in the body of the person, the lifestyle of the person they want to become, the sex they want to become. They don't have to go and see a doctor or a psychiatrist to get any checking whatsoever. For a £5, they get a certificate and they can then get all the benefits of this, whatever they may view them as, to be that sex. Now, as a disabled person, you've got to fill in a War and Peace amount of forms to get recognition that you're disabled. And they keep checking you every so often to ensure that you still are disabled. It's quite extraordinary and you're also given disabled toilets, but these people are getting away with everything with no red tape whatsoever. It's priorities.
It's a very bizarre set of circumstances, Roddy, because as you know, until now, there's been a need for a medical certification of dysphoria before there could be an application for the GRC. So the new way of doing removes that medicalisation completely so that anybody who wants to change their gender can do so. It increases the pool from a very small minority of the population to anybody at all who wants to self-identify. So any man can say he's a woman. There's next to nothing by way of checks. There's no clarity in relation to the meaning of the paperwork that has to be completed. And ultimately, men self-identifying as females, we know thus far, tend not to have surgical interventions. Somewhere between 80 and 90% remain intact males. So when we recognise them as females, then we're, I suppose, creating simply a legal fiction. Other people would have a different word for it, but it's slightly divorced from what I would call reality. But for my own purposes, I'm not allowed to self-identify as disabled when, as a matter of fact, I have one leg. That does not automatically qualify me for a blue badge. I have to apply for a blue badge every 3 years and pay £20 for the privilege. And I think this year, because I'm 60, my badge only lasts a year. I have to apply earlier than usual. I receive PIP, which has now been administered by the Scottish Government under Social Security Scotland. And coincidentally, within the last couple of weeks, a letter arrived from Social Security Scotland telling me it's time for me to be reassessed. So I look down and I count my feet because I wonder what great fortune I've had that perhaps I no longer self-identify as a pogo stick. So I think that there are a lot of aspects of Scottish public life that need to be considered in the round. If we're going to allow people to live their best lives, then we should have checks and balances in place and there should be safeguards. I'm not seriously saying that I should get to self-identify as disabled and choose the amount of benefits that I get. I'm fully cognizant of the fact that it's appropriate in a civilised, caring democracy that there are checks and balances and that somebody does do a job to establish whether or not I am disabled and if so, to what extent. But you cannot have that for folk like me on the one hand and on the other have immense ramifications in the context of allowing self-identification for something which for many people will boil down to no more than a feeling or an emotion. We need to be sensible, we need to have decency, and we really need to consider what kind of country we want to live in. We can't be dictated to by people just on a whim. And I think if we're to be judged by the company that we keep, then Maggie Chapman and others, including the First Minister, will ultimately pay the price because they'll not be famous, they'll be infamous for the horrors that they've brought down upon this country. Just finally, probably the two worst aspects of this debate for most normal thinking people are the two amendments that were proposed and both shot down. One was by Russell Finlay, and that was to restrict the ability of a sex offender to get a GRC. Now, who on earth would oppose that? Why would you oppose a step taken to try to create an element of safety and reduce risks? But that was defeated 64-59, I think it was. And the other one that came from Michelle Thompson, it's really important that people understand it. Michelle Thompson's amendment simply suggested that a person who was on trial for sex offences, if they were applying for a GRC, should have the application delayed until the trial was over.
Seems fair enough.
Now, the reason for that primarily was that otherwise a victim of, for example, rape would be obliged, while in the witness box giving evidence, to refer to the rapist, who, if that rapist had self-identified as female in the meantime, he'd have to be referred to as she by witnesses, by the victim, by the judge, by the fiscal, by everybody. And you can see how nonsensical and actually quite traumatizing that would be if you were the victim, or maybe it's your young child who's been sexually abused by a man who might have been your former partner. You might be the mother who's given evidence who has to refer to this person as she. Otherwise, you might find yourself accused of a hate crime. Now, the result of that vote was 61-61. So there were 61 people in that parliament who understood how important that amendment was. There was one person not there who could have voted and
Kate
didn't,
Forbes.
and that's Kate Forbes, who's on maternity leave. There's another on maternity leave, Megan Gallagher, who did vote. If Kate Forbes had voted for the amendment, it would have passed. She was on maternity leave. That's her entitlement, but you have to ask yourself why she would behave in that fashion at such an important time, given that she was supposed to be one of those who was against the reform in the first place.
Yeah, allegedly.
But the reason the amendment fell was because the chair voted against the amendment as a convention. So that one too fell. And they thought that that's the kind of legislation that we're creating in the Scottish Parliament. Really, it's shameful.
Yep, it's the hypocrisy in this whole thing, Yvonne, has been quite, on steroids, as they say. But how do you, as a woman, a feminist, or someone that's fought for women's rights all these days, feel knowing that sex offenders and those accused of sexual offences have more rights than you as a female?
Well, I'm a sort of my glass is half full person, and I would say that on the positive side, the net effect of this bill is that it has brought together a desperate group of women who ordinarily would never have got involved in politics. Elaine, my shiro that I was talking about, she's a physiotherapist, and you know, she does a lot of good in what she does. She has now become radicalized by this this legislation, but she's not alone. There are thousands of women who have become radicalized by this legislation. Women like me who are prepared to really push and maybe even cross the wire at times. I feel very strongly about this. When I left to go to Holyrood to protest, I mean, my husband said, I hope you're going to come home tonight. He was worried because there is such a strong feeling that it's one of those straw-breaking moments where women, law-abiding women who've protested peacefully, are now prepared to cross over the line. The anger is palpable. And I think that the Scottish government has unleashed the gates of hell. And people like Kate Forbes, who could have voted but didn't, should stand up to this, to what they've done. And it really, but as I say, what it has done, the net effect, is it's brought together women from all corners of Scotland who are no longer prepared to take this crap. And it will manifest itself in the next elections. We've got by-elections coming up in Aberdeen, for instance. I think there's one coming up there. And I think that the movement Women Won't Wish will show their muscle for this by-election. And I think that there is no such thing in Scotland now as a safe seat. And I've been looking at the election results of some of the MSPs, and they're toast. This is their
a lot of them deserve it.
Parliament. And I can't wait for the elections to come, because all of those women who lobbied the Parliament will get their own back when it comes to voting. And as any husband who has erred or strayed or done something to annoy his wife knows, not only do women not wish, we don't forget either.
For sure. That's why are there so many archaeologist women? Because they're great at digging up old facts, is the answer. Phil,
why am I laughing? I think it's probably the quality of the jokes in this year's Christmas crackers.
What can I tell you? They get worse. But your new hero, I'm trying to get on a Prism special to interview her. And I think she'd make a great guest, so I'm working at. And if you're watching, I'm looking to get you. Phil, what Yvonne has touched on there is true. If we look back, there's someone more famous, I can't think who it was, said you can't look forward without looking back. And if we look back to Labour, when they were steamrolled through things like the Iraq War, and then went into bed with the BT, the Better Together mob, and they were warned at that time by Alex Salmond, you have created and you will pay a huge price for this. Have the SNP put a target on themselves after this ridiculous bill goes through, along with everything else that they've done or not done recently?
It's the everything else and the betrayal of the core principle that would completely entitle Alex to say exactly the same thing about the SNP. Sadly, and very sadly for us, we're now in a position that to get independence, the prime directive, remember, this is what our existence, what the SNP is supposed to be about. Can anyone remember that? Can anyone remember that? Because now, if you want Indy, we now have no choice but to seek the political demise of SNP politicians. That's a ridiculous contradiction. That's an absurdity that the Scottish National Party are not fighting tooth and nail for Indy, but rather are running about as nothing more than a pumped up council representation of the establishment. And they're deflecting our focus and playing these little games out and being the big eye arms and diluting the talent that we had, causing the infighting, the infiltration, allowing themselves to be bought. You have been bought, some of you, and you're just not. You don't have the gumption enough to admit it. That disgusts me. So yeah, that's sickening. The alignment with what happened to Labour. I don't think it'll be allowed to go as far as what happened to Labour, because Labour are still hanging on to the whole unionist narrative, and they've rejected Corbyn in spite of the rise of the people, and along with the establishment, those within the Labour Party destroyed Corbyn. And I watched it very closely. I watched it very closely because I'm I'm acutely aware of the lobbyists and how it operates in Westminster and in Holyrood. And I saw with Corbyn, it was I had an office manager. I've mentioned this before, and uh, he he was watching he read the Jewish Chronicle every week, and I read the Arab Times. Right? I mean, we'd have discussions on it because this is the yin and the yang in a great deal of our politics. And shortly after Corbyn was elected, there was a 10-point critique in the Jewish Chronicle, inciting and basically suggesting that Corbyn was anti-Semitic. This is where it came from. That's where his demise came from. Yeah, this is the lobbying group that decided to take him out. Why? Well, you'd have to ask them.
Because he supports Palestine. That's why he supports Palestine.
Well, there's that, and the fact that he won't support the warmongering. No. That is the continued requirement for the continuous state of the current state of Israel, and it's a very contentious subject, and you tread on it. You tread on it lightly, but you need to speak the truth. We need to speak the truth, and this is what SNP have feared to do. We hear SNP saying, "Oh, you don't know what we're up against." I know what you're up against. I went in there, and it cost me a lot of money, and it cost me a fortune. It cost some of us a great deal to go in and fight for what we believe in. But we did it because we thought we were all on the same page fighting for what we believe in. Apparently not. Apparently there's too many in there that can be bought. And those of us who are principled enough to do what we believe to be right have been ousted. And we've now been taken over by those who would sell their granny. They would just, and they don't care. They just don't care about the people they're supposed to represent. They care about themselves and their ideologies and their supposed victories. It never ends, this clapping for the standing up, and that sickens me, clapping these paedophiles, some of them, and these sex offenders and these, that cheesed me off something rotten. We need to, and they're not all that. There's a lot of genuine people here, and that's not the people. We need to remind everybody continuously, because we're reasonable people. We are not attacking trans people. We're attacking those who are abusing this system, and it's wide open. And we're also trying to support women, and that's another thing. It's not just women; it's men and women. Men and women have struggled mightily against the pain and suffering that is life. It's why we got to where we are, because we work together. And if you try splitting it apart, well, there's only going to be trouble, because men's role traditionally is to protect women and girls. It's what It's just physically how the world has been. Now, thank God we've made some great progress, and women are much better able to be heard and to protect themselves. But that teamwork is still required in a civilized society. We work together for the betterment of all humanity, and is to suffer the slings and arrows that come, and we ought to work together. So it's not us and them, and we need to stop the divisiveness, not just amongst the sexes, and I say sexes, not genders, but we need to also stop the divisiveness in politics. And this is where I fear there has to be more pain before we can reverse the trend of a march towards independence.
Well said. I agree with you on it's a partnership role. I mean, the day I got married, my wife said to me, darling, she said, I want you, you can take all the big decisions in our marriage and I'll just take the wee decisions. And here we are years later, there's never been one big decision to take. Which just goes to show that's the kind of partnership in this house. While this is all going on, we mustn't forget, Eva, that there's, energy bills are hitting. We've had this horrific weather. People are getting hungry, getting cold. And we have our new king who's suggesting he doesn't want to spare a penny. We've no expense to be spared in his coronation. It's to showcase Brexit-free Britain and how wonderful it is to be British and have a royal family. And so spend as much as you like. But, the binmen, the railway workers, the nurses, they're not worth any money. But the king must get his big fancy coronation because it's once in a lifetime, he said.
Just goes to show that we have a monarch who is equally out of touch with as many of our politicians. We go back to why do we have devolution? Why do we want independence? It was to make Scotland a better place. And for the first few years of that, I would say that we succeeded. We certainly made Scotland a far better place when Alec was at the helm. And some of the stuff that's come out of Westminster has actually been reasonably positive from time to time. A sight in that respect, because we're talking about a monarch who is out of touch, who wouldn't know what equality or egalitarianism meant if it slapped him across the face like a wet cod. What we need to think about is why do we have an Equality Act in the first place? And again, going back to gender reform, why is it that there are issues about conflicts between gender reform and the Equality Act, and how extensive are those? Because they go beyond access to single-sex spaces. They include issues which is opposite in the context of the monarch and need and fairness. But they go into things like equal pay, sex discrimination, terms and conditions, single-sex clubs, for example. So if I decide that I'm actually a man and I get my GRC, does that mean I get a pay rise? Because men tend to get paid more than women. But if I become a man, do I then get to enter men's single-sex men's clubs? Or if I'm male, but I decide that I need a GRC and I become female, do I suffer a wage cut? So there's a whole load of stuff that you might think I'm being facetious about, but it's all to do with the kind of country that you want to live in, the kind of reputation that you want for your country internationally. And right now, at this point in time, when folk are skint, the bills for Christmas, the gas and electricity bills, all of that will be thumping through the letterboxes or by email very shortly, and there'll be a hell of an amount of grief and discord within this country. And by that, I mean the UK, not restricted to Scotland. And if the king thinks that a big fancy coronation and allowing the pubs to open earlier and stay open later is going to be enough of a distraction for people from all of that, then he's probably got another thing coming, unless he's doing the same thing that Nicola Sturgeon's been doing for years and constantly inventing diversions and distractions and tactics whereby the eye is taken off the ball. So in a UK context, the ball should be the cost of living crisis, which we know is man-made. And in a Scottish context, the ball should be independence and nothing less.
Correct.
And all the monarch's doing is exactly what the politicians want them to do, and taking people away from, you know, all the problems that there are that the politicians ought to be addressing are signally failing so to do.
Yvonne, one of the other things, talking about being detached from reality, there is I don't know if you've seen it, there's a clip going around on social media of Rishi Sunak being shown to be caring at a homeless shelter, handing out Christmas food. And he says to one of the homeless people, "What business are you in? And have you thought about getting into the finance industry?" Which, you know, every homeless person you meet is just desperate to be a merchant banker. But the only merchant banker in that clip was our Prime Minister.
Yeah, I mean, you couldn't make that up, could you? It's like when the Queen met a homeless person from Glasgow and she said, "What do you do?" And he said, "The same as you, not a lot." You know, these people are from a different planet. They have no idea how the other half live.
No, they don't.
And it's the optics are all screwed up when you see the richest man in the British Parliament doling out food and financial advice to homeless people. It's a nonsense. People must sit back and grab a bag of popcorn to watch for Britain's next instalment. You know, they just think
I'm not sure they do, Yvonne, you know, because I've had a discussion many a time with Phil on camera and off camera, is a lot of these Tories actually believe that poverty is a life choice and unemployment's a life choice. And that it's, you know, the reason that their unemployment benefit, which I don't know how much they think it is, but they think it's lots. And the only reason it doesn't help feed the family is because, well, they've got Sky Television and they smoke and they don't manage their money properly. They actually believe that shit. That's the problem. They're detached completely.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, there's a lot of people out there who do believe it because the King's broadcast was the most watched piece of television yesterday. More than 10 million tuned into it. And you can triple that for those who will catch up with it later. And we're just being seduced by absolute royal bilge at the moment. All you ever see in the papers are stories about Meghan and Harry wanting their privacy. Nobody wants their privacy more than me. I don't want to read about Meghan and Harry. Oh, really? Just go away.
Yeah. So what annoys you more, the royalty or the baby boxes? You don't need to answer that one. I think it's a toss-up for you. I mean, Phil, it's I've got to say, I mean, as a confirmed Republican, I was not one of that 10 million that Yvonne referred to. Were you sitting there waving your Union flag and drinking your tea out of a royal mug?
Certainly not. Total clowns in this for Meghan and Harry. If you want privacy, why are you doing 5 1-hour specials on your most intimate life? I mean, piss off. You complete gold-digging clowns. I mean, just attention speaking. To hell with them. Not interested in these bozos. The reality, this Rishi Sunak, he needs a kicking. Do you know that's what he needs? Because, you know, you look at this and it's all joking aside, mental health and all of the issues that are faced by people, the stress of looking, he's looking for his next big payoff. These people are looking for dinner, for tomorrow's food, for their families. You know, the guy's probably wearing his pants outside his trousers. You know, his resume probably isn't all up to date, you know, as the classic song goes. There's so many issues faced by these people, and these clowns are so out of touch. It makes you sick. It should make you angry. We should get angry. And more than that, it's time to get even. We've been mucking about with this for so long, and the King's speech and energy, it's all rolled. You're dealing with so many complex and detailed issues. I mean, you're spoon-fed, as Yvonne said, spoon-fed this porridge, this gruel, this thin gruel that's supposed to assuage all your concerns about life, the universe, and everything. It makes you sick. I saw something, and it was a while ago, and it was a flat pack cylinder on energy, right? And I said, I'm coming to something I hope will be interesting. And it was wind turbines invented by a 15-year-old Scot to be used in Kenya, right? Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. But the problem comes back down to that. That's fine if you're starting with nothing and you're in Kenya in a remote village. You've got some energy, or you use a wee bit of solar panel or something. That's a great start. But we're misinforming people about what the real issue is, and I've talked it a few times. If you don't understand base load, if you don't understand peak load, and you don't understand the intermittent nature of wind and solar, you're not going to solve our current modern world energy crisis by these intermittent power sources. And if you don't understand the economics behind this, follow the money. Al Gore, when he quit office, I've talked about this before, I won't go over it again. But you're being conned. You need to listen to the other side. You need to think about why all these renewable and green energy companies are reporting billions of profit and where that profit's coming from. It's coming from your energy bills. Wake up, people. You're being conned here. Now, I'm not saying there's not some legitimate issues. They jump on the legitimate issues, but we are being absolutely conned here. Al Gore left with 1.7 million, and he's selling bits of companies for 50 billion, 40 million. We're absolutely getting ripped off in this multi-billion green energy industry. Some legitimate stuff in there to give it credibility, but a lot of it's just a con game. Energy. The King's speech. The King's speech. He wants us to spend money in pomp and circumstance rather than substance and support and services. The rank hypocrisy of this clown. He uses his first Christmas message to sympathise with those struggling with the cost of living crisis and praises individuals that are countering it. He's the parasite in chief of an establishment system that continues to grow in its avarice while continuing to increase the maldistribution of wealth in our society along the lines of a Pareto distribution. When civilizations should be redressing that imbalance, and we only have to look at Scandinavia. We'll only have to look at Scandinavia and how to manage your energy, how your royals should behave if you want to keep them. Ironically, I don't care. I'm not interested in them. But if you do decide to retain the monarchy, and that is a decision for the Scottish people, Norway also shows us a model where that can be done in a way that is less crass. I mean, the last time I checked, the reported Royals bill, and it's a lie, was only about 350 million per annum that's coming out of the public purse. This is for some of the hangers-on, like Lord Lieutenants in each shire and deputies. No, it should make you more than sick. It should make you angry, and we should be doing something about it. And this is why it comes back full circle to our MSPs. Stop dancing these dances and these stupid wasting your time on these stupid issues and get us our independence. That's what you're supposed to be there for.
Just a wee addendum to that, the repairing of Buckingham Palace, or the upgrade, whatever you want to call it, is 350 million. Yeah. That's not included in the figure you're mentioning. That was the last I heard. It's probably $500 million or $1 billion by now.
Royal yacht.
Oh yeah, that's another one. It's which will probably be built overseas, just like the Caledonian Big Brain ferries, which is another disgrace. But while this is all going on, the press, the right-wing press, Eva, are ramping up against Mick Lynch and all the other strikers. They're even turning on the nurses. They're willing to pay soldiers 20 quid a day to break the strike of the ambulance drivers, etc., and the firemen. But they're turning up the heat. How dare you ask for a pay rise to, we've given you 11% inflation and you want 10%. How dare you? They're still taking a pay cut and they're still being attacked by the establishment. This, eventually it's got to explode, surely, Eva.
It would have exploded long before now in most other countries of the world. I think that the British are unique in their ability to keep getting kicked when they're down. It's the beauty of the internet, though, because we can all Google what we were doing in March, April, May, June 2020, when we were being enjoined to stand outside at 8 o'clock on a Thursday night and applaud our nurses. But we now know, as we suspected then, that when we were doing that, Boris and his cronies were partying like it was 1999. It's utterly pathetic. You also know that when the establishment is getting wired in about you like Mick Lynch, that you must have been able to strike some worthy blows and they're afraid from you. Because quite frankly, at the moment in the UK, the opposition is primarily the unions. And no doubt the Tories, obviously now joined by Labour, are intending to do all that they can do to reduce the power of the unions. What are we going back to? You know, I well remember stories from grandparents about the lives that they had, why they joined the army in you know, their teens, because there was nothing else for them to do. And when they came out of the army, they worked in the pits and that sort of stuff, where, you know, life was very dangerous and wages were very hard won. I had relatives, like everybody here and everybody in Scotland has, who applauded Labour for the house building programmes, for being able to have a house that had an inside toilet, for trying to address, for example, damp, for introducing a fair day's wage, for a fair day's work, for having minimum terms and conditions, holiday pay, maternity pay. You know, my granddad ran away from home when he was, I think, 11 after a hassle at school, and he walked to a farm outside Stirling where he worked, and he got leave twice a year, 2 half days in a year. So that would have been about the turn of last century. I'm not suggesting that we're heading back in that direction, but he would be burling in his grave if he saw where we are now in the context of arguments about paying lifesavers a reasonable amount of money so that nurses didn't have to go to food banks. Now, we know that those matters are being addressed in Scotland, but it took too long for those negotiations to be properly conducted. We know that there are ongoing issues in relation to teachers, there are problems for firefighters, there are far too many people in the country, Scotland and the wider UK, not being paid what they should be paid, and the fat cats at the top of the tree continue to laugh all the way to the bank. You've got the manufactured scandal in relation to targeting Michelle Mone for the many millions that she and her husband allegedly got away with wrongly. But there are very many others that appear to have binned or squirreled away billions during the pandemic, all of which would make an immediate massive difference to the lives and the conditions of ordinary hard-working people, because that money would have been available to give them a better income than they've currently got, and that in turn assists the economy in recovery, as opposed to inflation, stagflation, and God knows all what crashes lie ahead.
Yeah, because the thing is, Yvonne, if he was talking about there, you know, Michelle Mone and all the others, Dido Harding, the track and trace, that money gone will be in Panama. If you give the money to the nurses and the firemen and the railwaymen and all the others, the porters, the cleaners, they will spend the money in the local economy. They will create jobs by their spending. But I mean, you don't need to be a genius to work that one out, but it seems that our friends, and whether it be Labour or Tory, are more interested in appeasing the bankers and the corporate directors and the shareholders than they are to fixing the problems at the bottom of the rung. You're on mute, Yvonne. You're muted.
It's easy to have a go at the politicians, but who voted them into power? We did. You know, we are the ones who need to get wise and get angry and make sure that we're all members of trade unions and support the likes of Mick Lynch, who actually does enjoy, for a union leader, enjoys a lot of popularity in this country. And I just think that, I keep saying it, we need to get angry. And we're not getting angry. If this was happening in French we've seen what the French farmers do. You know, they're out with their tractors, they're bringing the country to a halt. We've got some quite plucky climate protesters who are gluing themselves onto the M25 and nobody's supporting them. And really, we've become too soft and too lazy. We just need to get up, get angry, vote out these muppets who have done nothing for us, especially those in Holyrood. In fact, I think that the Holyrood elections are going to be far, far more important than what's going on in Westminster. But, you know, Eva's right about the British. We're just too laid back. You know, what is it going to take?
The problem, I mean, I hear what you're saying about trade unions. The problem for me with some of the trade unions, they're still affiliated to the Labour Party. And the Labour Party is just the Tories with slightly watered down, not by much. I mean, Starmer's opposing strikers. Starmer's supporting scabs, breaking strikers. He's threatening his MPs. They'll lose the whip if they go on picket lines.
Yeah,
so that's the problem.
Every single trade union should have said, right, that's it. Cut off the funding.
Correct.
You're not going to stand on our picket lines. Well, fine, just cut off the funding.
Correct.
And you know, that's something. People are in a real bind at the moment. I mean, in Scotland, you know, those of us who want independence have got this awful relationship where we know we're going to have to vote or support in some way the SNP. And people just don't want to do that. And I'm not quite sure, you know, that they are, independence and the SNP are linked together whether we like it or not. And we're coming to that stage where, I mean, women outside Holyrood were in tears when they were saying how conflicted they were because they really want independence.
Yeah.
But they said, hell will freeze over before I ever vote for the SNP.
But we've seen this before, Yvonne, you know, we're going to abolish the House of Lords. I mean, all my life I've been hearing Labour saying that and they never did. We're bringing you the land of milk and honey, never happened. I'm afraid it's the way, but we're coming towards the end here of our show. The time flies in and I wanted to do a review of that this year and I look forward to next year. I just want to say one thing before we do a quick on that, is that the one thing that's pleased me, of all the things that have happened in the last week, 10 days, there's not been much to cheer me up. But one of the ones that got me is that no airline in the world at the moment is willing to accept passengers to Rwanda. And that is pleasing me. And so someone's saying, well, we'll just have to use the Royal Air Force. So you're wanting us to pay for your racism again. So we're all, you know, in decades to come, they'll say, nah, but you all were responsible for what happened in Rwanda. So I'm delighted that's happened. But Phil, just a quickie, because it's Christmas, it's coming towards the end of the year. We won't be back out. The prison won't be back on until next year. So this year, I'm looking at, if I think of this time last year when we sat down and had a wee chat, I don't see much advance in the cause for independence, unless you think, well, we've got rid of the Section 30 gold-plated referendum. That's progress. The polls are looking good. But actually, in practical terms, I don't see we've made much progress this year. Do you?
We haven't, because, as Yvonne alluded to earlier, SNP haven't. And it remains the vehicle for the moment. And unless there's a catastrophic demise, which I'm torn on. I mean, I don't want to see my party destroyed, but if that's what it takes, I'm with Alex Salmond on this. He said, if the SNP is terminated when we get independence, so be it. So if that's what it takes, then let's do it. But unless I see a radical change, and I mean radical, and it cannot be. And I'm talking about, let's get rid of everybody that didn't vote against this GRA nonsense. Let's get rid of them all. And there's some really talented people that I really like in there. But if you don't have the gumption to stand up for what is right and to stand up for the core principles of what our people want, and the full knowledge that you're voting for something that the people do not want for the benefit of yourself and the party that you represent, you're putting your party before the people. That's not what the SNP was about. It's what it's about now, but it's not what it used to be about. And a couple of things, Eva asked, what are we going back to? The nurses v soldiers, with the soldiers getting extra money. This is exactly what happened to the miners and the police under Thatcher. The police get more money and the miners were crushed. The nurses, what are you crushing nurses for? The hell's wrong with you? That's not a measure of a civilized society. How we treat the most caring in our society.
Correct. We can find 1.6 billion to send to the Ukrainian government to help them fight a war, but we can't send 1.6 billion.
It's not to help them fight a war. It's to help them disrupt the Russians and cause the Russians pain. Most of that money will be stolen. That's why Zelensky's got hundreds of millions in the Panama Papers. He's got a 75 million mansion in Florida, and he's a cokehead. I mean, let's stop mucking about here. This money's been stolen. Most of this weapon, a maximum of a third of these weapons get to the front line, and most of it is stolen. There's no accountants, as I said before, on the battlefield. So it's a great way. It's a great way to steal money. And that's what's happening. So don't be deluded by that, folks. Another thing, Yvonne talked about the trade unions. Some have been infiltrated by uber Labour loyalty people who put the Labour Party before the unions and the principles of the unions. It's the same principle that Yvonne talked about. We, the members of the political parties, need to stand up and remove those that are not representing us. Just as the same as the members of unions need to stand up and say, you're supposed to represent us, not the Labour Party. If you're not willing to withdraw the support for the Labour Party when they're not supporting us, then are we going to have to destroy our own unions by withdrawing from the unions, which is the whole idea of what the establishment want? We play into the hands of perfidious Albion all too often. It's a cunning, sleek-it machine that is well honed. It has crushed the unions in the past. It is crushing the unions now. It is deconstructing the SNP. And unless we start standing up for what is principled and what is right and what we believe in, and we allow these cheapskate, spineless, chinless, faceless, gutless cockwombles to continue to do exactly what the establishment want them to do and not what we want to do, then, as Orwell said, we deserve exactly what we're getting.
Thank you, Phil. You have been missed. We missed Angry Phil over the period. It went great to have you back. The clock's beating us again. So the first show next year, we're going to have to talk about what we thought about this year and what's going to happen next year. And I'll start it early in the conversation so we can do it. Ladies, gentlemen, can I thank you for your participation today? This is going to go out almost right away. Our Hazel, who's our techie today, is going to get this out on all our usual platforms.
What, so, no editing?
No
Is
editing.
that a bit dangerous?
Yeah, the cockwomble will stay in there. To you, to our viewers, I hope you've enjoyed this wee chat among my friends as much as I have. And we look forward to seeing you all in the new year. And until then, you and yours have a great new year. And please take care.
Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.